Welcome to In Progress, a podcast to help you grow and learn how to become a better version of yourself. Now, here's your host, Michael Cirigliano.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of In Progress. I'm your host, Michael Cirigliano. Today, we're going to be talking about socializing as an introvert. This is something that hits close to home for me because up until recently, even recently, I've been introverted, right? I've gone through middle school, high school, elementary school, being introverted, and it stems from a number of things. It can be being bullied in school, being ridiculed for talking. That can create a sense of anxiety when you do want to talk. It makes you feel like what you're saying isn't valuable because you were bullied. You could have been from a household where your parents yelled at you for talking out of turn or being loud and obnoxious at restaurants. All of those things that happen in your childhood can sculpt you in your adulthood. And that's something that you as an adult can take control of and change. So today we're going to be talking about that and how to overcome that. I was having a conversation with somebody who was a self-proclaimed introvert, who was reluctantly out. He didn't want to be out at this event that we were at. And he was saying he doesn't enjoy conversing with people, talking. He's a software engineer. So he's a very smart guy. And we were talking for at least 15, 20 minutes straight, me and him both. And the conversation that we were having, because I know what it's like to be an introvert, was a very deep conversation. Reason being, most of the time when you're an introvert and you don't like talking out in public to random people, it's because you don't see value in what you're saying and you overanalyze what it is that you're saying. So to combat that, you have to understand that whatever it is you're saying has value. When I was talking to this guy, he was talking about being a software engineer. He was talking about how he got into the field. He was doing it very, very charismatically. He wasn't being boring. He wasn't being monotone. He was very into it. And because of that, it captivated me, and we were going back and forth talking. And he was telling me how he just doesn't enjoy being out in loud environments and talking to strangers and having those conversations because he feels like what he has to say doesn't have value in regular society, and that's just never true. So something that I learned along the way, and a big help for myself, is realizing that whatever it is that you have to say is valuable if it's valuable to you. So in his scenario, he's talking about being a software engineer, and that's something that's valuable to him. In his mind, that's not something that a lot of people can relate to. And that is true. Not a lot of people can relate to being a software engineer. But just talking about it passionately, teaching someone about it, like having that quick conversation, that was a captivating conversation that he said he doesn't normally have. And that's because he overanalyzes it. He thinks that the regular person isn't going to understand or be interested in the conversation because of what that is about. And I'm here to let you know that if you're introverted, that is your problem. You don't think that what you have to say is valuable to everybody else. What you have to realize is, what you have to say might not be valuable to everybody, but it's in how you say it, not what you say. So when I started realizing that, I would go out and talk about anything. Free association has been a huge key to my ability to communicate with people that I don't know. Free association is basically a concept, a practice where you have a conversation with somebody, for example, a software engineer, and he brings up computers, and computers relate to cell phones, and cell phones relate to social media, and so on and so forth, where you can continue the conversation nonstop. And value doesn't have to be there in the sense that you think it does. Not everything has to be detailed and hard and teaching somebody something. You can be talking about the weather, you can be talking about coffee, you can be talking about a number of things. And the most important part about it is how you're saying it. So when I go out, I'll talk to people about a number of things. I'll talk to them about maybe, psychology, because I love psychology. So I'll talk about psychology, and people are captivated and get into that conversation. I've talked to people about this podcast. I've talked to people about sports. I mean, you don't have to know a lot to have the conversation. Again, the biggest hurdle that you have as an introvert is the fact that you don't think that what you have to say is valuable. And therefore, you overanalyze everything that is coming out of your mouth, and you think that what it is that you're saying just isn't going to hit. And I'm here to let you know that that's not the case. You can talk to somebody who has no idea about the topic that you want to talk about, and you can have a full-blown conversation with them. It's not about them understanding what you're saying. It's about how you're saying it, and it's about the conversation itself. A conversation is an art form. It's not A to B to C to D. That's not a conversation. Conversations jump all over the place, especially if you're out in public talking to random people, and if there's alcohol involved. Conversations do not streamline A through Z. They jump all over the place, and you have to realize that. You can't be over analytical about what it is you're saying or how the conversation is flowing or any of that, because then you're in your head. And when you're in your head, you can't actually have a good quality conversation because you're always thinking about what's next, and you're not just there enjoying that conversation. So you have to realize that if someone talks to you about the weather, you can just talk about the weather, and then while you're talking about the weather, maybe cars jump in your head, or maybe, a drink that you're having right now jumps in your head, and you just talk about that. It doesn't really matter what it is that's being said, because in social settings, it's more so just the vibe of everything. That's the biggest thing, is the vibe of everything. So when you're having these conversations with people, you have to realize that it's again, how you say it. So with me, I've taught myself not to overanalyze what I'm saying. If I want to talk about my podcast, yeah, there are going to be people that don't enjoy talking about podcasts because maybe they don't like podcasts. Maybe they don't care about my podcast. But I'm going to have that conversation, and at the absolute worst case scenario, they're going to change the subject to something else, and not in a rude manner either. They're going to listen, agree, listen, and then they'll change a topic to something that they're more interested in talking about. And it's because everybody, when they go out, wants to talk to other people, and they want to have fun. It's not about sitting there and having this one-on-one conversation all the time. Yeah, if you're out on a date, you can do one-on-one conversation, and that's fine. But the biggest hurdle that you have is overanalyzing everything you're saying. You have to, and that's why alcohol is such a big factor, especially today when most people don't actually know how to socialize properly. Most people, the bar is set so low. When you learn these things and when you implement these things that I'm talking about, you set yourself apart in a huge way. Me and everyone that I know that has gone through this and gone through the same teachings and everything, we all notice that we are above the bar. There are people that'll sit there and they can't have a conversation and joke around and have fun until they're 3, 4, 5 drinks deep. And that's a problem in itself. They need to have that alcohol in order to be social, because that's when they're loose and that's when they don't care. The reason why it works with alcohol is because when you're drunk, you're not thinking about anything. You're just having fun and creating a vibe. And that's why drunks typically talk more. And that's why they socialize more. And that's why bars exist, is because people like to drink, and then while they're drinking, then they get more loose and they get more into the flow state where they can just talk to people and it doesn't matter the outcome. If you're drunk and you're having a conversation with a girl and the girl isn't interested, you're not going to remember that at all. And it should be the same thing when you're sober. You should understand that some people are for you and some people are not, and that's never going to change. Some people are going to like what you're talking about and some won't. And you have to just come to terms with that not everybody is going to like you, but you overanalyzing everything you're saying and doing in a fear that somebody's not going to like you is going to put you back even further. When you learn how to socialize and you learn how to free associate and you learn to stop trying to put value into the conversation because everything you say is valuable, you'll realize The world is open to you. You can network with people, with business owners. You can meet people who own different businesses, and maybe that works with what you're trying to do. You meet somebody who owns a bar and now you got a new bar to go to. You meet a restaurant owner and now you go there and get hooked up. You can meet a girl or a guy and you can end up creating some type of a relationship off of that. It's about just the fact that a conversation is being had. And that's something that I had to learn through time and practice, and it's never going to get better if you don't practice. Yeah, listening to this video, you'll understand the components as to how I got from being a quiet introvert to being more social, but it's never going to actually hit home until you go out and do it. So you need to practice this. You need to go out, whether it's at Starbucks and you go to order a coffee and you're just a little more charismatic than you typically are. So instead of just ordering your drink and then going up and paying, order your drink and say, thank you very much. And that thank you very much will make the person giving you the drink respond in a different way than if you just grabbed the drink, said thanks, and went on your way. And it's those small little stepping stones that lead to a bigger thing, which is you being able to socialize. Because being introverted, there's a lot of things that make it tough to go out and socialize, right? Obviously, we've covered overanalyzing everything, making sure that what you have to say is valuable. But also, there's the fact that if you're introverted, typically you're going to have that social battery. And the social battery, when you're out socializing all the time, is going to drain, and that's why you give yourself the time to not socialize as well. It's equally as important to not go out as it is to go out. You go out to practice and to socialize and to create relationships and to meet new people. But you also don't go out sometimes so that you can recharge and you can relax and you can be in an environment that you're most comfortable in. And if that environment is you sitting at home watching Netflix with a beer or a coffee or a water or some food and just sitting in silence, that is something that you have to do. When I started this journey, I would schedule out what I was doing. So I would go out Friday night or Saturday night, but I would have 1, 2, maybe 3 days where I would stay in the house and I would turn on a basketball game or I would turn on stand-up comedy so that you get yourself laughing and you're in a better mood. Being in a great mood is also a huge factor as to how you can socialize. My biggest thing was stand-up comedy. Watching stand-up comedy puts you in a better mindset. If you're laughing, you have to let yourself laugh. You have to let yourself loosen up. You can't be so over analytical. And for me, watching stand-up comedy helped me with that. I was able to watch it, and I realized when you first start watching that kind of stuff, you sit there and you analyze it. You sit there, you're like, that's not really funny. Is that funny? I don't know if I like that. And eventually you learn to loosen up and you laugh at things that you wouldn't have laughed at before because you're not over-analyzing it. It's funny now because you're not analyzing every little bit. Oh, is the crowd laughing? Because that's when I'll laugh. No, something that's funny to you could only be funny to you, and it doesn't have to be funny to everyone else. So I did that, and I had my in days and I had my out days. And being able to have those days where you're in and you're secluded and you're not talking to anybody and your phone's over on the other side of the room, you're not on social media, you're not worrying about anyone else, those days are key to being able to have those days where you're out and you're socializing. And with myself, I realized giving myself that balance allowed me to get out and be more charismatic, be more of an energy, be more of a vibe. People can feel you. You have an aura about yourself when you go out and you're in a good mood and you have a game plan going into it and you're not worried about what you're saying or what other people are saying. That's the biggest thing. And that can only come from you figuring out what it is you need. So as an introvert, talking to an introvert, I would recommend to start off, have those conversations with the Starbucks employees. Have those, not conversations, but have a little more charisma with what you're saying. Don't make it transactional, make it personal. Then from there, maybe you go out to a local dive bar, somewhere that's not really busy. And you go out there with a friend or two, and you guys just sit there and drink, and then see if socializing happens. And then after a while of you being there, you get comfortable with the environment. You're more open to having those conversations. You learn the bartender's name. You learn other employees' names. You meet them. You're friends with them now. So when they see you, they know you. Now other people will see that and they'll be like, oh, well, that person must be a cool person to talk to if all these other people know them. And then you go from there and you continue on and up until you're in clubs, until you're in bigger bars, more popular bars. But make sure that you give yourself those 1, 2, 3 days to just sit in the house and be by yourself, because that is the most important part of trying to socialize as an introvert, is finding that balance. There are people that are extroverted that can go the entire week, going out every single day. I know people like that. They can just go out every single day, drink every single night, and then wake up, go to work, and then do it again. There are people like that, and that's great. But if you're an introvert, that's not you. And you have to play to your advantages. And your advantage as an introvert typically is you are intellectual and you know it. You've spent more time alone studying things, researching things. You're interested in things that are more in depth. And because of that, once you take that knowledge and that interest that you have and you put that into a conversation with someone at a bar or a club, you'll realize that those conversations aren't typical conversations. And people tend to gravitate towards those conversations more because they're in depth. You don't have to have in-depth conversations all the time, but once you get to a point where you're able to have both in-depth and shallow conversations, you realize that you can get yourself into those in-depth conversations more, and you will have people around you listening to what you're saying. Just the other day, I was talking about stoicism at the bar. I was talking about stoic philosophy at the bar with 2, 3 other guys, and we were sitting there having an in-depth conversation at the bar with drinks in our hands. Like I said, it doesn't matter what it is you're saying, but if you can get comfortable just having those conversations, you can have those in-depth conversations that you think are valuable, but you'll realize that once you get to that point, they are valuable. But when you're learning, you have to let go of that. You have to understand talking about the weather, talking about drinks, talking about music, singing the songs in the bar out loud, belting it, not caring what anyone thinks about you. That's what's going to get you to the next level. I'd like to thank you for watching this video today. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We'll be putting out more content like this very soon. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to DM me or comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.